Before we end the topic, and I'd slightly want to move away from the pound for pound thing, you mentioned Sergey Kovalev there, and we've had breaking news come out just within the last 24 hours that he's tested positive for a synthetic testosterone. What do you make of this, Andy, first of all? What do you make of this news breaking out?
It's always not exactly shocking, but it's always disappointing when you hear about somebody failing a test. Although I would argue that when someone returns a positive test and they've been cheating and they get caught, it's something we should almost be celebrating, because we can't fool ourselves that people aren't doing it. If we had a year where nobody tested positive, then it wouldn't mean that nobody's doing it. It would just mean that the testing was inadequate, nobody was getting caught. So there's two ways of looking at it. He's towards the end of his career now, and he will have an explanation for it. I haven't managed to discover what that is yet, but I think the sad thing about it is, a lot of the time, is that this happens, and as boxing fans, people involved and who know how things work, I don't think any of us seriously think that there are going to be any real repercussions for this. He's towards the end of his career. I don't think anybody really thinks that he's going to get hit with any kind of punishment which will have any particular impact on him or really discourage anybody else from doing it. So that's what, I'm painting a fairly bleak, depressing picture there, but boxing has just failed relentlessly to get its house in order when it comes to performance-enhancing drugs and how you treat people who take them. And unfortunately, I don't really see that changing in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. Umar, you being a fighter, when you hear high-profile fighters, tested positive for a performance-enhancing drug, what do you make of the whole situation? Like Andy said there, it doesn't seem like things are changing. It doesn't seem like things are going to change. But when you see stuff like this as a fighter, what comes through your mind?
After my last fight, I had to stay in the hospital for a few days, and I had a lot of time to think about boxing and what boxing meant to me, what boxing is, what life is, all the rest of it. And one of the things that hit home with me was that this is really real. I was in the hospital waiting for further assessments because they said I had a mild hematoma. It was the first time I heard of it. I remember laying in the hospital bed and thinking,
I think it's a bit of a technical problem at this present time.
It's like tune in after the break, find out what he was thinking.
I mean, hopefully you'll be able to rejoin us and finish that sentence, because that is the key, isn't it? That boxing is a sport, but it also isn't, because it's very, very serious, and people get seriously injured and people lose their lives sometimes. And I don't know if I was a fighter, hopefully we can ask him, I don't know if I was a fighter, if I would ever want to fight someone who had tested positive. That'll probably limit your career ambitions if you get towards the top end of the sport anyway, because quite a lot of people have. But I think mentally that would be really difficult to get in the ring with someone who has cheated in the past, and you've got to be thinking they're probably still doing it, or they might still be doing it. And we all know boxers who have boxed people who, after the fight, they won't have said so publicly, but they'll have said his work rate, his strength, his everything, there's no way he wasn't juicing. And we all know people who think they've experienced that, but they've gone into it kind of knowing that was the case. I mean, I don't know how you do that.
I'm back.
So Umar, you were in hospital and you
see how I just... Oh, wait. I was in hospital. Is that what? Did I cut off right at the start of what I was saying?
Yeah. So you're going to have to start that all again.
That was going on for 2 minutes. No, I was just saying, I was in hospital and I was thinking that I'm in here potentially with a life-changing brain injury, or a brain injury that could end my career and I can have to live with for the rest of my life. But it also could have been worse in the ring. Something worse could have happened. And, I could have been a vegetable. I could have lost my life.
think we're having some technical problems from Umar's side, unfortunately.
Well, he is in Mexico, in fairness.
Yeah, so I think that's going to have to. Yeah, I'm not sure if he's actually going to come back on. We are trying to get hold of him. It is a live show, and it's the first time we're doing a live show, so we are having a bit of teething problems. Some of the problems, unfortunately, are not in our hands, but we will try to get him back on. Andy, just going off what you were saying, then you talked about a fighter. If you were a fighter, you wouldn't want to fight somebody who's tested positive in the past. When you look at someone like Canelo, then, for example, we know that he tested positive for elevated levels of clenbuterol, but now he is on a 365-day testing, or whatever that testing, WBC testing is. Then, Andy, what would you say to that? If a fighter was to redeem themselves and put them through some sort of thorough testing where they get monitored for the full year, would that open the gates for you to, if you were a fighter, for you to fight a fighter that tested positive?
I think if I was a boxer, then inevitably I probably would end up fighting someone who had tested positive. I think that morally I wouldn't want to. I would feel that they should have been banned from the sport for life, and that should have been then done. Although there are grey areas, and Canelo's case is an example of one. That clenbuterol is a complicated thing, and you're talking trace elements sometimes, and there are different explanations for how they might have got there. But to return to the question, if I were a fighter morally, I would like to. It would be great if you were in a position to say, I'm not going to fight anyone who's tested positive. But realistically, to be in a position to say that, you've probably got to be one of the top names in the sport. Otherwise, you are going to severely limit your career opportunities. But I just think that mentally, it would be a difficult thing to get your head around if you end up in the ring with someone who has failed, and they have failed because they've taken a performance-enhancing drug knowingly. There's no real debate that they've cheated and just got caught. I would find it hard to reconcile myself with fighting that individual, because I just don't think I would have any real faith that they weren't necessarily still doing it, because boxing's punishments regarding it are so laughable.
Umar, then, going off what Andy's saying, would you fight somebody who's tested positive in the past, or would that not go through your head?
I think Andy summed it up right. Most fighters don't have that luxury of choosing. And I guess my line keeps cutting because the powers that be don't want me to say what I'm trying to say. But in summary, what I was trying to get to, was that I genuinely believe that most top athletes, not most, but a large proportion of top athletes, not just in boxing in general, are on something. As someone who's been in boxing for such a long time, I'm not a personal trainer, but I'm qualified as a personal trainer. Did GCSE PE in school, and I've done a lot of studies on, the human body and and I realized that there's only so much the human body can do unless someone's got some sort of deviation in the gene or DNA or something. But then you see all these athletes who look one way one time, and then another time they look completely different, and so many things change. But also, you just look at some athletes and you just look. I think when you're in the industry, you can see when there's either something special about this person or they're on something. And speaking to people and listening to different podcasts and stuff, and just learning things that I've learned, I just believe that a large proportion of top athletes are on something. So I've already accepted that I'm going to fight people that are on stuff. I'll probably have boxed people. There are people that I've boxed in the past. You guys can decide who you think that could be. But there are people that I've boxed in the past where I thought, this person could be on something. But that's part of the deal when you're an athlete. And unfortunately with boxing, a big part of the aim is you're trying to hurt someone. But I just accepted that I'm probably going to fight people who are on something. And that's why I pay so much attention to the nuances, because for me, that's my equalizer. So you can get as fit, as strong, and as fast as you can, or just whatever you take to help you would help you be. I live a good life. I eat mostly organic unless I'm eating out. I eat clean, don't drink, don't smoke. I'm committed to my craft. I mean, I don't have a license and I'm still in the gym, So physically, I know I'm going to be as good as I'm going to be. And then mentally, I do my work. I just meditate before I came on here. So mentally, I'm healthy. And then skills, from a skill set perspective, I just want to be as nuanced as possible so that I'm able to break things down, which is really why I respect the craft of, you know, the likes of the Tyson Furies, Billy Joes, Canelo, as controversial as that is in this conversation. Just people, Lomachenko, people who operate at such a high skill level. Floyd Mayweather, my favorite, because there's so much to learn from them that allows you to then be able to nullify whatever benefits that a person on drugs may gain from what they're taking. That being said, it doesn't mean that it's an easy task, but boxing is what I've chosen to do, and I've just got to make the best of the situation I'm in. We all have our ideals in situation, but this is something I was saying earlier on the line cut. We all have our ideals, but all our ideals are individual to us, and then there's the reality that we all have. So with that being said, I mean, do I want a clean sport? Yes. Do I want all of sport to be clean? Yes. But I think this is bigger than any of us. There's a reason why top athletes hardly ever get done for drugs, and when they do, the sentences are very light. And then you get, you know, people who there's a boxer, I forgot his name. He got done because there was traces of cocaine in his system, and he got suspended for years. And there's traces of cocaine, not even like he was on it hard, but then is cocaine a performance enhancing drug when you're out of a fight? No, it's not. It's just a banned substance. But then you get top rich athletes getting done with all types of things and getting a slap on the wrist. The system's broken anyway, so I don't pay any mind. I just accept that the people with money probably get away with stuff because the testing bodies don't want to deal with getting sued by them because they'll probably go bankrupt. So all us guys who are not at that level, we just need to accept that we're going to have to fight these guys. And then when you get to that level, you can do something like what Mayweather was doing, because now you're in a position of power where you can start requesting Olympic style drug testing for your opponents before you fight them. You know, when you're in a position of power, you can put things in place. But until then, you just got to accept that it is what it is. We can sit and complain and talk about what we want, but the reality of the situation is, I don't think bodies want to catch top athletes or rich athletes, and when they do, the sentences are so light. There really isn't a deterrent. And then for us, coming up athletes, you know, all right, some people might take some stuff, but most of us are clean because, for starters, we can't afford the stuff that those guys are taking. But also, it's just not something that's in our. I should speak for myself. Like, I hear things like Kovalev has been taking, well, he's got done for testosterone. But like, where do you get testosterone from, and how do you know how much to take, and when do you take it, and all that? I have no idea. I'd rather not, because then there's less temptation. But what I'm trying to say is, the guys that aren't at that level, we don't really have the luxury of being able to do those things in the first place a lot of times. So it is what it is, man.
Great stuff. Well, Umar, you've given us a lot to think about. I think it's fair to say as we wrap up the first edition of round one. Just want to thank everyone that's tuned in, and obviously all our guests for joining us, particularly as we're still here, Umar Sadiq and Andy Clarke. And Un, always a pleasure to work with you, of course.
Of course. Thank you very much, guys. It's been a pleasure. It's been the first episode of round one. I know we had some
great setup, by the way, Un.
Hey? I know we've had some teething problems.
Great setup, your production clip.
Thank you, Umar. I appreciate that. But yeah, we did have some teething problems in the show, and we are going to get them rectified for the next one. But guys, thank you very much for tuning in to round one, brought to you by Seconds Out. My name's Uni. That's my co-host over there somewhere, Danny Flexen, who's in his pajamas for show. But yeah, we'll be back soon. Make sure you like, subscribe, do whatever you can to support the channel. And as soon as boxing starts again, or as soon as it's running in the UK again, we will try to get you out the content that you guys deserve, and the sort of content that you guys want to watch on the Seconds Out channel. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.